Hello there friends and welcome. For today's BG3 guide we have another companion build, this time Astarion as a gunslinger of sorts, that's right. While we cannot wield guns in the game, we can go for the closest alternative, dual wielded hand crossbows. And with this build you'll get to unleash an outstanding amount of numerous ranged attacks at the enemy, almost as if you were firing guns, each shot capable of a lot of damage as well. Your Astarion will be the king of alpha strikes, easily destroying everything on his path, with many great bonuses applying to the first turn of battle as to further support your ambushes from stealth. And the best part is, just like my recent Carlac thrower build, this Astarion will be quite powerful from the very early game too. Even as early as level 3, your alpha strikes will ensure most enemies are dead before battle even truly begins, with great bonuses to damage at level 4, and of course it will only get better and better from there. So without further ado, let us get into our Astarion gunslinger build, first with character creation. This build can also work for the main character if you prefer, but Astarion is good enough. The only difference is I'd trade the high elf race for something else like the Zariel Tiefling or Githyanki. In any case, you can start this build in two different ways. First as a rogue, or ranger, which is my preferred pick. For Tactician Mode it helps to have all the boosts you can as early as level 1, right? And to me, ranger is more stacked for the early game, because you'll not only have some useful spells, but you get to specialize in ranged weapons for a very nice +2 to hit chance, which of course is great for Tactician Mode where enemies have higher AC and early you won't have that many boosts to compensate. You'll also have better weapon and armor proficiency too, but this doesn't matter that much. Lastly, by virtue of high dexterity and Astarion's background already providing him with bonuses to sleight of hand and stealth, you'll still be quite competent at both, including disarming, traps and unlocking chests, despite not starting as a rogue. But it's up to you, right? After all, both the level 3 archetype, Gloomstalker from Ranger or Thief or Assassin from Rogue are quite powerful. I just prefer Ranger myself. For the favored enemy, amusingly enough, this has nothing to do with favored enemy if you've played 3rd edition D&D or Pathfinder, but anyways, there's two choices here. Bounty Hunter is a classic, you'll get proficiency in investigation, which can help because I honestly don't think any other of your party members will be proficient in this, right? But the best benefit is improving the power of your Ensnaring Strike spell from the Ranger spellbook, by making enemies save against it with disadvantage, which of course highly increases the chances of them failing the save in the first place. If they fail the save, all of your allies' attack will have advantage on them. The main issue with this is that for a dual wielding character, I'm not much of a fan of the skill, because it costs both a normal and a bonus action whenever you want to use it, which means it will prevent you from using your bonus offhand attack. Which is why I prefer to go with Keeper of the Veil. You'll get proficiency in Arcana, which can help if you don't go with Gale as a party member, because this Astarion will have decent enough intelligence. Last but not least, you can cast Protection from Evil and Good, which is one of the best early game spells. The other choices aren't particularly useful to me, so either Bounty Hunter or Keeper of the Veil. As far as your Natural Explorer ability, definitely be Stamer, so we can get the Find Familiar spell. When cast out of battle, it's a ritual, right, so won't cost you any spell slot. Replenishable on short rest, and the Raven Familiar is quite powerful because it can fly and also blind enemies on hit without any save. So long as it hits the enemy, they'll be blinded. All of your allies will now have advantage on attacks against the blinded enemy, quite useful. Now as far as ability scores, we of course want to focus in dexterity, as it enhances our 2 hit and damage with both the melee weapons you want, but most importantly ranged weapon attacks of course. Together with, initiative, stealth, sleight of hand, it's quite a loaded stat for this build. 14 constitution is more than enough as usual. Dump charisma, let's pick constitution here as our secondary stat, but leave it at 14. And the other stats are up to you, you don't exactly need 17 dexterity, unless you want Astarion to be either your main character or accept Auntie Ethel's boon, right, at chapter 1 from the Hag boss fight, so that you enhance it by a +1. Otherwise 16 is more than enough. Then I also like going with 14 wisdom to help with perception and insight checks, especially for trap detection. And also 14 intelligence, right? For some other nice skill boosts. Of course, you don't need it exactly, you can just, like I said, start with 17 dexterity, and so on. So long as you have 16 dexterity and 14 constitution, the rest is up to you. For the leftover points, just strength, right? So we can have some extra carrying capacity. For skills, stealth certainly, and I also like insight, together with either nature or survival. For level 2 we get both our ranger spells and fighting style, quite a loaded level so early. For spells, as I said, I'm not much of a fan of Ensnaring Strike. Ideally Long Strider, right, because if cast out of battle you have infinite uses, and any character in this game can benefit from extra movement speed, right, especially Astarion, because even if you won't have high AC, because of his high initiative he has ambush tactics to hit and run, right? You ambush the enemy with a powerful alpha strike, then you just run away from them, and Long Strider will help with that. The second spell is up to you. Hunter's Mark can help a bit, but mostly early on. The thing is, it's also a bonus action and chances are you wanna use the bonus offhand attack instead from dual wielding. But it's a choice early. Fog Cloud is amazing early on to blind enemies without any resistance, which of course increases your chances of hitting them with your ranged attacks, especially useful for when you get the Sharpshooter feat, which reduces your to hit chances. But I'd rather cast this from someone else, like Gale the Wizard, most other casters. Honestly, the other spell pick is up to you. Speak with Animals can help for some extra dialogue and quests. But you can go with Cure Wounds, Hunter's Mark, even Ensnaring Strike and Fog Cloud if you prefer. For the fighting style, definitely Archery, and it's one of the reasons I prefer Ranger earlier instead of Rogue. Because of +2 to both your main hand and offhand crossbow hits, it is a really powerful benefit, especially for Tactician Mode. For level 3 we get our Ranger specialization, and of course you want Gloomstalker, right? Which fits a stealthy ambush alpha strike character the most. First you have the Dread Ambusher feature, which not only grants you a +3 bonus to initiative, and this when combined with your already high dexterity, means you'll always act first in battle before enemies can react, even if you fail to ambush the enemy. Superior Dark Vision is amazing too. Lastly, the best part about Dread Ambusher is it grants you an extra attack during the first round of combat, right? Together with movement speed boosts too. And this attack will even do an additional 1d8 damage, quite good. You'll also get the ability to hide as a bonus action, but Rogue can provide this too. Even the Disguise Self spell for free. Speaking about spells, pick anything else you want here too. For level 4 we'll want to remain a ranger until level 5 for the extra attack, and of course we have an extra feat now, which for a ranged build is extremely important. Sharpshooter, this is what makes ranged characters so powerful in BG3. All of your ranged weapon attacks, including offhand ones from dual wielding, will have a massive +10 to damage. For a game like BG3, which is a low numbers game, a +10 on all of your attacks, it's simply insane. Especially when you consider you are pretty much machine gunning the enemies into submission as a Gloomstalker assassin character later on. This does have a penalty of -5 to both the main hand and offhand attacks too, which can be a bit annoying. It's part of why I like Ranger Archery style for the +2 bonus, and like I said you have other ways of overcoming this, like the Blast spell, also Fog Cloud, Blind from your Familiar, High Ground, the Stealth advantage. You really have all the tools available at your disposal, even early on. Also, don't forget, this is a toggable passive, right? So if the enemy has too high AC, and you don't have any of those tools I mentioned available, which I find very hard, you can just turn it on and off at will, as to not be hit with the penalty. Lastly, it will even remove the penalties from attempting to shoot enemies above you, right? So quite a powerful and loaded feat. At level 5 you also get a lot of extra features. First and most importantly, the extra attack, the Misty Step for free, amazing too because this lets you teleport around the map, right? Which means you can teleport to high ground. Second, we have level 2 spells, and I would personally just go with Pass Without a Trace. This spell will ensure you'll never fail a stealth check. It works on all allies, is concentration, but it's not like you have many concentration effects on your ranger. And has pretty much infinite duration, right? What's not to love? Now, because remaining a pure ranger from now on won't really provide you with good enough benefits, this is when I would multiclass into Rogue, right? You'll have Sneak Attack, which by the way works with your dual crossbow guns, so even better. And as a rogue, you can also now specialize into other skills, ideally sleight of hand and stealth of course, and I also like acrobatics. Level 2 rogue won't provide you with much, you can already hide as a bonus action from ranger anyways. But level 3 rogue at character level 8 is when the fun really starts, because of course we get to pick our subclass. My preferred choice for this build is Assassin, because I think it can really enhance and further complement the whole alpha strike enemies into submission from stealth playstyle, as both Gloomstalker and Assassin have bonuses that work on the first round of combat, together with attacking from stealth. First with Assassinate Initiative. In combat you'll have advantage on attack rolls against creatures that haven't taken a turn yet. When combined with your Uber initiative boosts, that's pretty much all enemies. Second, any successful attack roll against a surprise creature will automatically be a critical hit, which can highly enhance your damage. Lastly, through Assassin's Alacrity, you immediately restore your action and bonus action at the start of combat, which can help because when you attack from stealth, usually you already lose an action, not with Assassin's Alacrity however. As far as Thief, the main benefit of course is having an extra bonus action, which means an extra offhand attack. To me, Thief is better for, let's say, boss battles or battles that are gonna last long, right? Because you can then use an extra bonus attack on every round. The problem is eventually you'll come to realize that when it comes to most of the battles in the game, because you can alpha strike them into submission and battles won't really last more than one round, well, it's part of why I prefer Assassin. But as I said, Thief is also very powerful. You might as well keep Assassin or Thief to level 4 just so we can grab an extra feat. And ideally, ability improvement, dexterity. If you started with 17 and accepted the Hag's gift, Anti-Ethos boon that is, it will already be a 20, right? Otherwise I think it's more than enough. And I know some will say, why don't you just use the gloves of dexterity? Well, because we have some pretty powerful glove options for this type of character. We'll want to multiclass again now at level 10. And you have two options. 2 levels of Spore Druid will grant you an extra 1d6 necrotic damage on all attacks. Considering we have a machine gun on our hands, that's a lot of extra damage. Otherwise, you can go with the classic fighter, right, for the extra action, which of course means more attacks, and the further critical range boost increase with fighter level 3, which is why I prefer it. As a fighting style, you can't really pick archery again, unfortunately. You might as well just go for defense, as the other ones are mostly about two-handed weapons. At fighter level 2 you of course get Action Surge, which means 2 extra attacks per short rest for a true machine gun of bolts. And lastly the classic champion subclass for even higher critical range. And by the way, this character can almost max out his critical chance, since the bonuses from our dual wielded melee weapons will also apply to ranged attacks. Together with other gear boosts of course. And speaking about gear, it's time to cover it now. For the helmet, very early you can just go with the Haste Helm, right, to increase your movement speed upon the start of combat, which is where you are at your strongest. Just for hit and run tactics, right? To overcome the fact you won't have very high AC, assuming any enemy manages to survive. For Act 2, definitely the Covert Cowl, right? To increase your critical range when you are obscured, super easy to do since you have the range advantage. Plus it definitely fits an assassin style-wise. And later you can just go with Saravok's Horn Helmet, once again for the critical range increase, except this one is not situational at all, it's always in effect, right? But usually, unless you are directly next to a light source, you can check the little sun icon here, which is full. So long as it's half full, you'll be obscured enough for this to proc. For cloaks, the perfect one to complement our stealthy ambush playstyle is the Shadeslayer cloak, to increase our critical range when attacking from stealth. It's not as good as the cowl because usually you only be stealthed for one attack, right? The initial strike. Not that many other great cloaks in the game, besides the one that has auto-invisibility on kill, but that's Dark Urge Origin only. For armor, as I said before, AC doesn't matter much for you, right? Because you have the stealth advantage, the range advantage, you can just hit and run with your super high movement speed after the initial of a strike and so on. Which is why I like to go with the Graceful Cloth. It will increase your dexterity by a further +2, so we can cap out at 20, even if you didn't accept Anti-Ethos gift as Astarion, right, so not the main character. Plus the permanent Cat's Grace effect means advantage on dexterity checks, that is, stealth, disarming, and lockpicking. As I said, it doesn't have high AC, right, just the base 10, but you can always go with something else, including the many medium armors starting from Act 2 that allow you to apply your full dexterity modifier to AC. I just don't think they're necessary for this type of assassin character. Plus, I do think the Graceful Cloth looks pretty cool on our assassin character. The Balist armor is also quite powerful for this type of build. Not to equip it on yourself, right, because its main ability, Aura of Murder, is well an aura with a rather short range around your character, and we want to be a ranged character, right? Ideally, you want to leave this to a character that will bother meleeing with the enemies, including a tanker and so on. And well, enemies close to the character will become fully vulnerable to piercing damage, which of course means double damage taken, so they'll melt from your crossbow machine gun attacks. For gloves, ultimately Helldusk for the extra 1-6 fire damage on all our ranged machine gun strikes. But very early as Act 1 even, be sure to go with the Gloves of Archery for the further +2 boost to range damage, which of course is way better when you're dual wielding for more attacks. As a matter of fact, this is so good that it's gonna last you until Act 2. For Act 3 you'll have Helldusk as I mentioned, or you can also go with the Legacy of the Masters for +2 to attack rolls and damage. For boots, not that many great choices. I like the Disintegrating Nightwalkers as always, for the Misty Step ability per short rest, but you can also cast it yourself as a Gloomstalker Ranger. There's the Speedy Light Feat 2 to generate lightning charges for higher 2-hit and damage, but it requires you to dash first, right? And I'd rather use our bonus action for another offhand attack, as I don't think you can prep buff with this out of battle. For amulets, there aren't that many useful ones. As always, Surge and Subjugation, so that whenever you get a critical hit you can paralyze the enemy, which is a death sentence, no matter the enemy. Well, it has to be humanoid, but that's pretty much most important enemies in the game. The Amulet of Misty Step, once again for extra Misty Step. Always be sure to teleport to high ground. And the Amulet of the Harper's Steel for shield, just in case to avoid blows. But mostly, ultimately however, I like the Face Semblance Amulet to grant advantage on pretty much all saving throws, besides strength and dexterity. Which can help because when it comes to rings, the risky ring as always is the best for any character focused into multiple attacks. Especially one that has penalties from Sharpshooter, right? Because having advantage on all attacks for free, well, chances are you'll always be hitting. Plus it's even better when you're stacking extra sources of critical range. And well, it does have the penalty of granting you disadvantage on saving throws. With Face Semblance we can overcome some of that, but chances are the enemies won't be focusing into you at all. Like I said, you can just hit and run. Lastly, the Strange Conduit Ring, for an extra 1-4 psychic damage on hit when concentrating, and well, as a ranger you can concentrate on, for example, Pass Without a Trace, or also Protection from Evil and Good, both of which are permanent. If you'd rather the risky ring for someone else, there's always the Caustic Band for +2 acid damage, especially Act 1 wise, and the Callous Glow Ring for +2 radiant damage on hit. Now let's cover weapons and consumables. For our melee side, I mean you can actually melee if you want when dual wielding because it's gonna be based on your dexterity anyways, with finessable weapons, but I'd much rather use ranged attacks, right? Anyways, what you want are weapons that have nice passives, especially the critical range boosting ones, because they will apply to your ranged weapon attacks too. First, as always, the Knife of the Undermountain King, achievable at Act 2, for +1 to criticals. And the Blade of the First Blood, which will become the Bloodthirst Blade if you loot it after battle, I believe. Anyways, it's the same effect, +1 to critical range, just like the knife. And for ranged weapons, we of course went with dual hand crossbows, because they can be dual wielded, for more attacks. Even as early as Act 1, at the very start of the game, if you're having trouble finding hand crossbows, simply buy them from the Tiefling Merchant at the Druid Grove. Thing is, it's kinda random, right, if it has it or not, so simply save before long resting to make him restock his inventory until you get what you want. You can get both a +1 hand crossbow and a normal hand crossbow from him. But later you'll definitely want first the Hellfire hand crossbow, together with inflicting burning on enemies whenever you attack from hiding or invisibility, always. This is Act 2, and you can also combine it with the Fire Stoker, which deals additional damage to burning enemies, which the Hellfire will do, or the Nether Mister found at Act 2 in the Moonrise Towers. It's rather unique in that its base damage is actually force instead of piercing. But other than that, there's not much to it outside of being able to cast Magic Missile once per short rest, which can at the very least help disrupt enemy concentration. For spellcasters anyways. And don't forget, the Elixir of Bloodlust will be your best friend, right? For the extra action whenever you kill an enemy, very easy to do with this character's Alpha Strike. It's very simple to get and craft and even lasts until the following long rest. What's not to love, right? Might as well be permanent. Well, alright friends, so this was it for my Astarion Gunslinger Assassin build. If you found it useful, please remember to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member if you can. As always, I appreciate your support. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.